Namaskar and welcome to this exciting show, Sattology, Debunking Mythology. We have done many shows you must have watched in which we took you through different aspects of mythology that is being promoted in our societies, especially to the American students and also other students, any other university affiliated to American universities, they are also teaching the same thing. But hardly you must have heard an Indian version of American history or European history. So, some of you who would like to know more about it, do go later on the same video being published on YouTube and comment on it. So, without delay, I would like to welcome a great personality from India, Deepali Patwadkar. Did I pronounce your
Hi.
name properly?
Yeah, that is right. That is right.
So,
Thank you for having me on this show. And especially what I like about this is the name that you have taken up, Sattology, which means Satya and speaking about truth.
thank you so much, Deepaliji. So, would you like to tell us about a little bit about yourself? That what is your strength in bringing these topics to the fore?
Okay. Basically, I am a computer engineer and I was working in software for almost 20 years. Then, like last 20 years, I have been studying Indian history, and from there, I started learning about different cultures of the world. Few years ago, I did my master's in Indology, and I'm also writing a book on Indian cultures abroad. So, this is the background I come with. And one of the things that I'm also working on is the sun worship that has been in vogue in most of the ancient cultures. So, that's another thing which I love to do.
Thank you so much, Deepaliji, for this wonderful introduction. So, you have done research on many ancient cultures, including American and also Arabic and European. And so, what is one thing that you find it intriguing or connecting to ancient Vedic culture? Is there some connection there?
Before we talk about connection, what I would like to talk about is what are the common things across the ancient cultures.
Okay.
And the most common thread that I find among all these cultures is the way they connect to the nature. So, all these cultures I find they worship the nature, they worship sun, they worship even the spirits, different spirits of wood, or maybe spirits of forest and trees and rivers as well, water bodies. So this is something which I find really wonderful, that people found a divinity in the sun, in the moon, in the stars, in the earth, in the air, in the winds. That's the common thing amongst all these cultures. So today, we have come back a full circle where we talk about living ecological life, living eco-friendly life, having zero carbon footprint. And when we go back and look at these cultures, we find that's exactly what they were doing. They were worshipping the air, they were worshipping the earth. So basically it is like, respecting all these natural elements and staying away from pollutions and polluting all these natural elements.
Great point. When a child is born, and if you leave him in the jungle on his own, he'll naturally grow up respecting the nature and the sun and the moon. And especially sun is so scarce in the Western countries. So
Mhm.
sun is all, people pay heavy taxes in California for the sun. So it's a like a price to be paid. So it's very natural. So what do you think so I visited Stonehenge. I used to go there regularly in Salisbury in UK. So there in Stonehenge, it's a structure. It's like a dial, and if you take the two magnetic rods and they take on every single hill, it will move in opposite directions. So there was certain energy that they had made there, and what they say, according to the history of Stonehenge, is that it used to be a moon. It used to calculate the movement of moon, and that's a historical site of UK. So
Yeah.
anyone who goes to UK, that is one of the maps where people they take you to show them the ancient culture of UK. So do you think something is connected there with what is the ancient cultures?
Yes, yes. Actually, Britain and the uh, part of Europe, which is northern France and all that part, that was the uh, part where the Celtic culture was flourishing. So it was flourishing at least until 3rd, 4th century. And we see these ancient structures that were created by these people, which are called as henge. So they used to create a henge with either stones or bamboo or wood or something like that. And these were basically circular structures. And these circular structures, from what I have read, they were for finding out the time of the year. So these structures could tell it's winter solstice, or it is summer solstice, or it is the equinox day. So it would tell something like that. When I had been to the Stonehenge about 2 3 years ago, I looked at it and I was thinking, like, this is a clock in made out of stone, and it's right there. It is working probably even today. We just don't know how to read it.
Actually,
So
people read it because they use the shadows of the. So there is a central point in that Stonehenge structure, and people read it. So in the night, in the based on the shadow of the moon. So so you have to stand in a particular place, and you can exactly calculate the moonrise from.
okay.
Yeah, you can do that even today. People have been studying that structure for a long time, and the church destroyed it in King Henry's time around 300 400 years back. They went there and destroyed it, called it a pagan culture, and that's what they write. It's a paganese culture. But it's irony that there is a team known as Celtics in UK which is plays football.
Oh, okay.
So they have
See, this is what happens. In spite of all of this, even today's people, they just simply connect to the ancient times and to the ancient cultures. So when we see even Princess Diana, Diana is basically a Roman goddess, the
correct.
Roman goddess of moon, and it's you cannot stop people from connecting to their roots. That is what I think happens.
Exactly. I think when you remove mythology, then satthology automatically comes out.
Yes, yes.
It's just like putting a red color in a water, and you just remove the red color, then again the water is pure.
Water is pure.
Just
Yes.
because you put the red color doesn't mean the water became red.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
truth will come out in one way or the other.
Truth
So
will come out.
in go ahead, please.
Yeah, basically, if you even if you try to hide the truth, it finds its way.
Yes, it's a natural thing. Ice is an unnatural condition of water. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have ice, that means it's not water is not in its normal state, which is liquidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is solidified under certain conditions. Now coming back to the northern Europe and Scandinavian countries, I have a lot of friends there whose name is Ramo, Brahma, Vishnu. In Ireland also many places are there which is like Ganga. There is a many places. Nilesh keeps on telling me all those things,
Mm-hmm.
and so there are a lot of places which are there in which have some connect Sanskrit roots. Do you think that is again the old culture which we're talking about?
Yes, actually, when we say culture, it includes so many things. It includes drama, music, it includes art, architecture, it includes attitudes of the people, their behavior, their beliefs, and it includes language. And it includes everything that comes in the language. So it includes all the literature as well. It includes all the stories and all the mythology. So all of this comes in the culture. And one small part of culture is the religion, you can say, the gods and the stories around those gods. So religion is a part of culture, but the other way is not right? Because religion is only about gods. It doesn't have anything to do with cuisine, with dressing sense, with customs and behavior. All those things are not included in religion. So when we speak and when we see these things across the cultures, so it's across Europe, it's across Central Asia and in India, when we see these similar names, and we always go back and start thinking that there is some connection between them, and that connection is still alive in the language. So for example, uh, this word myth. So from the in the Sanskrit we have the word mithya, and in English it comes up as myth and mythology. So we see so many connections, and these connections are still alive in the language, though it may not be alive in the other aspects of our living. These uh, connections are still alive in the language, and that is probably the way to find out how the ancient people may have been, like, connecting with each other, how they must have been communicating with each other.
So in Sanskrit, the works on dhatu.
Mm-hmm.
So atha means now. Atha means now, or atah means therefore. So
Mm-hmm.
ma atah becomes not therefore or not now. So
Mm-hmm.
this dhatu of that is myth in Sanskrit. Ma, chota e ki matra, and tha. So that's a dhatu. From that
Mm-hmm.
comes mithyachar, mithyankar. All these things come from there. So when we
Yeah.
say myth is a Sanskrit dhatu, and like many shloka you'll see mitho abhipetya grihavratanam in Bhagavad Puran. So you say that
Right.
mitho abhipetya. So the myth is a Sanskrit word like sat. Sat is a Sanskrit root. So Satchid Anand, Satya. So all those things come from there. So the dhatu is myth, and the Portuguese use the word and combine with logos, and they
Yeah.
call it the science of lie, or something which you cannot trust without proof. So
Mm-hmm.
mythology means something which has no real basis,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why I invented the term. Opposite of myth in Sanskrit, dhatu is sat. Sat
Yes.
means eternal, or truth, or not changeable. Sanatan, that is sat.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes we call param satya. All this. So then you put adjectives on top of it. So that's why I combined it. Call it sathology. Now you put a very good point about culture, and you explained it very well. Because even if people can, their faith can be converted, but culture cannot be changed. It's in their DNA. The some the Scandinavians behave completely different from English,
Mm-hmm.
and the Germans behave completely different than Scottish, totally different, diagonally opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cultures, they shape the identity. And uh, and and coming back to in my first book I wrote about Alexander the Mouse, and I talked about how the Romans, they inherited the 12 gods from Greeks, and
Mm-hmm.
just the Romans renamed them as Olympians. But the behavior of all those people, it is still today the similar, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
It
Since you mentioned, I'll just interrupt you here. Since you mentioned 12 gods, it is so interesting to see this story of 12 gods in all these ancient cultures. Like, for example, in the Rigved, we find there are 12 sun gods. So they are called as Bara Aditya,
Dwadash
12
Aditya.
Aditya.
Mhm.
Yeah, 12 Aditya. So the number 12, it comes because of, like, the sun travels the path in the along the zodiac, and the zodiac is divided into 12 signs.
12
So
cents.
the year is also divided into 12 months. So there is one sun for every month. Thus we have 12 suns. So that is the logic that we see in the Indian culture and in the Indian scriptures, because those are still living. So we can, it's continued and we can see it. But we still see this number 12 across all the ancient cultures. Like, for example, the god Mithra. of the Roman and of the Persian people, that god is always shown along with the 12 zodiac signs. So we see Mitra, or the Mitra of the Sanskrit name of sun god. We see him with the 12 zodiac signs. Or we see the 12 Olympians, the 12 Titans. We see 12 gods of the Turkish people. We see the 12 tribes of the Israel. And we see again 12 disciples of Jesus. So we see that number 12 continuing throughout the history.
So looks like the number 12 is binding all the cultures together.
I think it is that concept of like, there is a god and the god has 12 followers, or there is a god and he has, like, 12 people who are with him at all the times. So you cannot think of just that one god. It has to be in that number 12. And because all these cultures, even if these are, like, new religions, like Christianity is new, or whatever, these new religions, they wanted to have that connection with the old cultures. So they had to have, like, they had to inherit these things. So among them, one of them is the 12 gods.
No, it's very fascinating. Like in Rome, which is kind of the cultural head of the entire Europe today. Today,
Hmm.
uh, they that city has 7 layers within the city,
Okay.
above each other, because every
Hmm.
single culture came, built something on top of it.
Right.
But few structures have survived, like Pantheon. Pantheon
Hmm.
is again a very old temple of 12 goddesses and gods. And
Hmm.
today they have replaced them with 12 popes. They show the last 12 popes. But if you look at the history of that structure, that has got more, there were 12 original Greeks, and then Romans came in. And then after that, the Roman king was called a pope after the church was made, which was almost 500 CE at that time. And it has remained that way till now. And now they made Vatican few hundred years back, and now Vatican is a separate city, but rest of the Italians in Rome do not follow what Vatican says. It's so amazing. It's right there, but people don't
Hmm.
follow. People believe in their old identity.
Okay.
So how does food play a part in these cultures then? Have you done that analysis, that like is the food connected to their original culture?
Food must be also, like, connected to the original culture. Let me tell again this, because religion is pretty much centered around god and the way of worship, and everything that is around the god, the do's and don'ts around the god. But a culture, it includes food habits, it includes cuisine, it includes uh, clothing, all those things. So when we speak about food, we see that it doesn't come from the religion, but it comes mainly from the culture itself. So even if when we see that Christianity is spread across so many continents, or when we see that even the Islam, when it spread across the continents, the food still remain the same. Even if the way of worship or the god has changed, the food remained whatever the culture had already. So there
The
may be a
food,
few things which got added with the religion. Like, for example, maybe uh, in India, if you see, along with Christianity, what the food item that has come is the cake, which is made on Christmas. Or with Islam, what we see is the sheer kurma, the sweet milk dish that is made on Eid. So these are new things which have come with the religion, but such addition of food, or food getting associated with religion, is a very rare thing. So you might see only one few food items which are related to the religion, but otherwise food is related to culture. And when I say something is related to culture, it is basically to the geography of that region. It depending upon, like, how hot. or how dry or how cold or how wet a particular area is, accordingly the people are going to eat, accordingly the people are going to wear that type of clothes, accordingly the people are going to take care of the dead bodies. So when we look at the ancient Greeks, they used to burn the cremate the dead bodies. But when we look at the Arabian cultures, we see that they bury the dead bodies because they have so much sand and they have so much land. So it is the geography which creates these things. It is the climate which creates these things.
But ultimately, the body ends up in the earth in either way.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Back, back to the elements.
coming back to the music. Now, if you see the history of Parthian Empire, and when the Arabs, uh, conquered Parsi community,
Mhm,
Parsi is the ancient name, or
mhm,
Parthian Empire, they conquered them. Sassanids, they conquered Sassanids. Now, when they conquered them, they did not change, they could not change the culture. In fact, the local culture changed them to such an extent that the Islam was called Ajame Islam, a
mhm,
new Islam, which is in Persia. And but the culture of the people in Iran today, which is Islamic country, is very closely connected to India. All their spices are Indian, and it looks as if just a name change was done, but the culture is still remained the same.
mhm,
I'll tell you one practice in Iran which is very similar to India, where the women go to temple in Mangalarti. If you
mhm,
go to Pandarpur Mandir, Pandarpur in Maharashtra, so in the Rukmai Vitthal Mandir, the women make this sound with the tongue, ulu, 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 like that kind of sound,
mhm,
and very shrill sound. If you go to Kali Mandir, same sound. And all the whenever there's a birthday celebration or a marriage celebration, the women in Iran make the same sound today also.
okay, okay.
Because I went to one Iranian birthday, a lot of Iranians in Los Angeles, and they made the same sound. And I told them, this is the same sound you hear when people go for early morning worship in India. Women make that sound when the first darshan opens, view opens of the deities. Then they
Mhm,
make that sound. It's considered auspicious. And that is the same culture they follow there and also in Syria and Jordan.
mhm,
So that one I can tell you by my own direct example, that shows that there was one culture prominent across all these areas.
mhm,
Pakistan is a gone case. Is something very weird happened in Pakistan. So they lost all this culture, but Iran has maintained. Syria, Jordan, Iraq, many places, Baghdad, this culture is there, and
mhm,
it's the same culture is there in Greece today. So the
mhm.
women, Lithuania, Greece, and Latvia, the Eastern European countries also have the same culture. Do you know of any other cultural things which have retained from the past and which can still, Indians can relate to that?
Mm, yeah, uh, ancient, uh, one of the elements of the ancient cultures was the celebration of winter solstice. So that is the time when the sun turns back to north, and it signifies kind of the end of winter. So that was celebrated by all the cultures of ancient Europe and the basically the cultures of northern hemisphere. So we see this celebration in the form of Christmas. So before the Christianity arrived in Europe, the people of Europe who have been living in very cold times, and for them surviving through the winter is a difficult part. So as soon as the sun turns back north, so it takes 2 to 3 days to change that direction, to stop the motion to the south and start coming back to north. So this happens on 25th of December. And the ancient cultures, they have been celebrating this event. So we see the celebration of Sol Invictus, that is the sun that is unconquerable, or this is kind of rebirth of sun. So this has been celebrated by the ancient cultures of northern hemisphere, and we see this celebration in India also. In India, what the ancients did was they were celebrating the Makar Sankranta, or the time when the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. Slowly, because of the recession, what happened is, it moved away from 25th of December. So we are celebrating it on 14th of January. But still, what we see is this event being celebrated all across the northern hemisphere. So even when Christianity started spreading throughout these cultures, the people didn't stop celebrating this event. This was such a big event and such a happy event, because winter is going away, sun is coming back, warm days are going to come back, and spring will be just around the corner. So people were like so happy with this event, they wouldn't stop celebrating it. So sometime, what the church did was, like, to shift the birthday of Jesus Christ from possibly in March or maybe in January to 25th of December. So slowly, instead of celebrating the return of sun or the birthday of sun, what was celebrated was the birthday of Jesus Christ. So this celebration still continues under a different name. That's it.
I think there are many people in the world, in South America and other places, they celebrate Jesus' birthday in March.
Yes.
Some of them will celebrate in January 7,
Mm-hmm.
and they do that. Many of them, and it's remarkable that the cultures have survived. Like you said, cultures have survived, and maybe the faith imposed their own things on them. But and also what you say is very true. The faith may change. I may have faith in a ball with round, or I may have faith in the ball being oval. So it
Mm.
still the game goes on.
It will.
Same with the South American cultures also. If you look at the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas,
Mm-hmm.
I live in San Diego, which is very close to that area, and U.S. West Coast mostly was governed by that same culture, and a lot of native aborigines, natives in America, Native Americans are there, which follow a different culture than the Europeans. Europeans follow a culture which is largely faith driven, but
Mm-hmm.
you see that the Christians in South America are different than Christians in Europe. Nothing matches. The looks don't match, the eating habits don't match, nothing matches.
Yeah.
Because the cultures are surviving and they're thriving also, but
Mm-hmm.
they have been Christianized to a large extent, where if you go to Brazilian jungles, they are not taught any history before 1492.
Yeah.
Their history is removed, and their history is known as mythology now.
Mm.
So when you remove those people from their own culture, so if you go to Argentina, you'll see a lot of fake Europeans. So they
Yeah.
consider themselves more Europeans than Argentinians. And the problem happens then is that because the Spaniards don't accept Argentinians as equal to them, they think we are the original people and you Argentinians. So
Mhm.
throughout the life, a normal Argentinian always lives a life of second class Spaniard.
Mm.
So it's like if you remove the history of people, identity, like you said in the first part of the interview, is that you said identity is completely wiped out.
It's an identity crisis actually. When you are not able to tell who you are, that's such a big question. Who am I? And that is the question which I think the culture tries to answer, or the philosophies which are there in that culture, those philosophies try to answer that question, who am I? And unless you find that answer, unless you are able to connect yourself with the nature, with your family, with the past, with your ancestors, it's a difficult life. So identity crisis is a very big problem, and unless the ancient cultures, we connect ourselves to those cultures, this problem wouldn't go away. As you pointed out, the same thing is with Pakistan, because for them, they do not really want to go back before 1947. So 1947 was when Pakistan was created by breaking India, and they do not want any they do not want to know the history before that. So it really leads to nothing but a identity crisis.
Well, Pakistan is a totally different case because it is a Hindu country, and they don't want to accept their past where they think like Hindus. Arabs call them kafir, and Iranians call them kafir. So they are like a second class citizen even for the Arabs, and they can't go to Hindu because they were told to hate Hindus, their own ancestors. Still, they have so many temples that it will be difficult for Pakistan to remove the Hindu identity.
Mhm.
Everywhere they dig, there's one new temple comes out. So they'll have to dig the entire Pakistan to remove it.
Yeah.
So it's a different. We can do some other. It's going to be a huge program just on Pakistan because right from Takshashila, where Mahabharata was spoken, and the city was established by Bharat in Ramayana. So it's a gone case. Afghanistan and Pakistan, they're pretending to not be Hindus, but they are all Hindus.
Hmm.
Their eating habits, food, everything is same. So thank you so
Very well.
much, Deepaliji, today for speaking with us and sharing a little bit glimpse. We'll cover something more in detail in the future sessions. And thank you, viewers, for watching it live. Many of you joined, took our time on a Sunday morning to watch this show. And we'll invite you again for some detailed discussions on some of the topics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was great to be here on Sattology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.